Hey everyone, and welcome back to Sasquatch Theory. I hope you guys enjoyed the last documentary and at least found one strange photo or video within all the trail camera footage. I really had a good time making the documentary, and I hope to make many more. The black figure captured in the trail camera footage could be a crow. David and I discussed this from the beginning, and we thought it kind of resembled a small group of turkeys. There is honestly just no main feature in the photo to say exactly what it is. The first thing we both said, and everyone around us, is that it was just a crow. I honestly put it away for a few weeks in the beginning, and it wasn't until I looked at it again in detail and compared it with the crows in the same spot. To me, the distance of the object from the camera seems too far to be a crow. I am not defending the photo, I just think it's too blurry to tell, honestly. No matter what, I think it is important to share my finds and to always keep an open eye and mind for anything out of the normal. Of course, if you look in the comments of any possible Bigfoot videos, people completely smash the video on every possible level. It's always going to look like a person in a suit or just be too blurry to tell. I just want to say this right now, if you guys saw something, you alone know what you saw. Don't let anyone ridicule you or tell you didn't see it. Don't worry about people not believing you or losing your credibility. If you know you saw something, you shouldn't feel ashamed or alone because there are many others out there like you. Get a hold of me if you need someone to talk to, and I can listen and maybe help you find a person in your area with the same experiences and outlook on the situation. I really want to say thank you to the people that have spoken up. It really has changed the playing field in my opinion and really moved the subject further than before. To some, it may seem like just a story, but for those who have experienced the activity, each story can provide some insight or small theory to the activity that seems to occur in many forested areas around the world. As you guys saw, the new logo and merch was released recently on the last video. I really put a lot of time into the logo, and I wasn't going to be satisfied until I had something somewhat original. The merch will be used to fund the channel and future videos. I also think it is great people will be supporting my channel and the Bigfoot subject. There will also be new artwork in the future for the channel and merchandise, so keep an eye out for that. Anyways, you guys watching and liking the channel has helped me out so much, so I honestly couldn't ask for anything more. I really appreciate it, everyone, and thank you. I also wanted to mention, keep an eye out for new stories and phone call interviews. Many people have sent in their stories through email, and I've been struggling to keep up with the phone call podcast. I purchased a laptop recently that blows my desktop away, so it should make the editing process much smoother, as well as the uploading process. I really intend to do some great things with the channel, and I hope to bring many stories and pieces of evidence to light. So if you send in your story and feel like I may have ignored you or decided not to read it, hold on, because I will be getting to it very soon, and I appreciate your patience. Alright, moving on to this next phone call interview from a gentleman out of Florida. Al had some very close encounters with the Florida skunk ape and did an awesome job at telling his encounters here on Sasquatch Theory. I have never been to Florida but have always wanted to go. The Florida swamp seems so mysterious, and it seems like the perfect dwelling place for an unknown creature trying to find a place of solitude completely absent of human intrusion. I often hear people laugh at the fact of Bigfoots being in Florida, and they always refer to people being everywhere. And believe me, I understand humans have come a long way and explored almost every area, but the forest is a very large place and you can't be at every spot at every given moment. That goes for trail cameras as well. Anyways, enough of me ranting. If you have had a Bigfoot encounter and would like to be on the show, please email me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. If you guys enjoy these types of stories, please hit the like button and be sure to subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell notification to stay up to date with all my future videos. Alright everyone, let's dive into this next Bigfoot encounter from the state of Florida. Hey Al, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. I appreciate you being on the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Miguel. It's my pleasure to be here.
Awesome. You are from the state of Florida, correct?
I'm from the state of New York, but I spent my summers as a youth down in South Florida. Yes, I spent all my summers down in South Florida.
Okay, awesome. Al, if you could you run us through your encounters and experiences in Florida?
Okay, well, the very first Bigfoot experience, skunk ape, whatever you want to call it, happened in the summer of 74, 1974. I was 12 years old, and I was went to visit my sister down Florida, South Florida, in a little town called Davie, Florida. With my cousin Anthony, who was about 15. Anthony was like my older brother. We did everything together, and we would go down there every summer. And my sister and her husband Joe, they had an Italian restaurant and in Davie, but they lived on the outskirts of Davie, a little development called Sunshine Acres. And to get to this development, you had to go over to like two canals, and it was like a giant square. And I would say each block was maybe a half a mile long. It was like 2 square miles, and when you first came over the canal on the right hand side, there was a horse rancher. I lived on the right hand side of the road when you first came into the development. And then as you went, my sister lived like in the middle of the development. And as you went towards her house, I would say, I guess it would be the east side of the development. There was a cattle rancher there, and then we were just off one of the main streets of the cattle rancher. And so we would go down there every summer, and my brother-in-law was an ex-marine. He'd put us to work painting and all kinds of stuff, whatever needed to be done around the house, yard work and stuff like that. But there, he was very cool. We had dirt bikes, and we would go riding in the swamps with the kids from the neighborhood, because like I said, we were down there every year, so we knew everybody in the neighborhood. And the cattle rancher, he wasn't crazy about us, because we used to tear up his lawn when we came out of our street on our dirt bikes, and my brother-in-law was always paying that guy off. And but the horse rancher, we hung out with his kids, and he liked us because we would do chores around the ranch, make a few extra dollars, and little beer money, you know what I mean, to go in the woods and
Hmm.
have bonfires and stuff like that. And we would actually take tours out in the woods as well with the horses, during the day. If he didn't have anybody and the sun was going out, we'd go out as well. He'd ride up in front, we'd ride in the back, make sure everybody stayed on the trail. It was a great time. Just loved South Florida and loved the little town. It was definitely a cowboy town back then. The biggest thing that happened there was like on the 4th of July, the rodeo would come into town, which was very cool. Me being from New York and never seen a rodeo before, and it was awesome. And but one night, my cousin and I were hanging out, late at night, and my sister had, the way her house was set up was she had a circular driveway in the front with a fountain, and then she had a fenced in backyard. From the side of the house to the back of the property was fenced in, like a 6 foot fence. And she had two big German shepherds, and and we would sleep in the sunroom. It was a room. When you first walked in, it went down, and she had, like, it was like a second living room, but it had a pull-out couch and a giant picture window, and that's where we slept. So one night we're up late watching, I don't know, Don Kirshner's rock concert back in the day, and wrestling came on and all that stuff, and the dogs started to go berserk. We smelled this horrible smell come past the house, and the dogs were going crazy. And I had to put the dogs in the garage, otherwise it would have woke up the whole house. So the next day, we tell my sister and my brother-in-law Joe. We said, hey, something happened last night. Like, we got this horrible smell, like smell like 1,000 skunks, and the dogs went nuts. And my sister said, oh, that's the skunk ape. And we like looked at her and like, what are you talking about, the skunk ape? And she says, yeah, down in South Florida we have a Bigfoot, and the locals call it the skunk ape. My cousin and I thought that they were pulling our legs. We weren't buying it. We're like, yeah, skunk ape, okay, right. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because
Yeah.
we're kids. We think they're just jerking us around. And so afterwards, after we finished our chores, we would meet up with the rest of the guys in the neighborhood, and we'd go into the woods and we'd hang out. We'd ride our dirt bikes and stuff like that. And so we're hanging out. We're talking to all the local kids, and we're like, "Hey, is there anything called the Skunk Ape?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, he comes around every year around this time, but um, he's been around a lot this year, and." We started seeing more and more articles in the newspaper about the skunk ape, and we started seeing more and more news reports on TV about the skunk ape. So we're like, wow, this thing, must be real. Like being from New York, you know, I yeah, I've heard of Patty. I seen the Patty footage and all that other stuff, but I didn't think Bigfoots were, down in Florida. I thought they were out in the Pacific Northwest. That's where I thought they were. I didn't think they were down there.
Right.
And so, we said, okay, the skunk ape is, it's legit, because they're reporting about it every single day on TV, and they're interviewing cops, and there are all these articles in the paper, people, seeing these things looking in the window as people, they thought it was a peeping Tom and all this stuff. So it's like, okay, it is what it is, right? So, we weren't worried about it. We had these two big German shepherds, and we had this fenced in yard, and we were okay. And then as time went on, one night, again, it was in the wee hours, we were going to bed, and my sister had floodlights around the house on sensors, and me and my cousin Anthony are laying in bed, and the floodlights go on in the driveway, and we see this giant shadow go across like the picture window, like this the curtain that came down on the picture window, and we see this giant shadow walking across it. So again, the dogs start to go insane. I jump up, I grab the dogs, I bring them in the garage, and I come back and I do like an army crawl to the end of the window, and I'm peeking through the bottom of the shade to see what's out there. And I see what I can only describe as a like King Kong, right? This thing is standing out there in the floodlight. The floodlight is hitting it, and it's standing there, and it's looking at the picture window. At this point, I thought it was looking at me, but it, hindsight being 2020, obviously it didn't see me down in the corner peeking out, but that's what I thought. And then when it looked in the window, it must have seen a reflection of itself, and it did this like incredible Hulk flex and scream, and the scream was like blood curdling. It went right through you. My cousin Anthony was like frozen with fear. He couldn't move, and then it had, like, to describe it, it had the conical head, it had canines because I seen its teeth when it screamed. It was, I estimate it to be at least 9 feet tall, 900 pounds. um it had a reddish tint to its fur. It was dark, but in the floodlight you could see like a reddish tint. So at this point, it starts to walk towards the east part of our property. So I grab my cousin Anthony and say, "Come on, let's go." And we run into the bathroom on that side of the house. Between the kids' rooms, there was a full bathroom, and we left the bathroom light off. And this is weird because we had the bathroom light off, and the window was tinted, and the screen in front of the window was a black screen, and we're looking at this thing as it's walking past the fence line. And like I said, it was head and shoulders above that 6 foot fence. And the whole time it's walking, it's looking at us like it can see us, And the whole reason to keep the lights off was that it wouldn't be able to see us in the dark, but it's looking at us. And that plot of land on that side of my sister's house was vacant. They hadn't built any homes on that plot yet, and it had wild watermelon patch in it. And this thing bends down and it grabs a wild watermelon and it takes a bite out of this wild watermelon, and like one bite just like devours most of this stuff, and then it just drops the ends, and it keeps walking towards the back of the property line. At this point, Anthony and I, we run to the screened-in patio. We are in the back of the yard now, and as it passes the back of the house, the sensor lights go on back there, and we watch it as it's walking down the fence line. And the whole time it's walking down the fence line, it's twisted, like its whole upper body is twisted, looking at us like it can see us. But we have the lights off in the patio because we don't want this thing to see us. And it gets to a man-made lake. There was the guy, the neighbor behind our house, had a man-made lake, and we used to swim in it all the time because the water in the man-made lake was cooler than the pool that my sister had. Her water was really piss warm, you know. So
Mhm.
this thing squats down and cups its hands, and he starts drinking the water out of the man-made lake the whole time, looking at us. Then it gets up and it walks off like on a southeastern direction towards the swamp where we used to have our bonfires every night. We used to ride our dirt bikes and stuff. And it goes into the swamp, and it just goes off, and it just starts screaming and screaming and screaming. So the next morning, we tell we're all amped up. We couldn't sleep, especially by that big picture window. That thing could have just reached in and grabbed us. And we tell my brother-in-law, my sister, and we go outside and we look, and right along the fence line, you can see the footprints that it made in the soft, sand, And I would say they were about 18 inches long, maybe 9 inches wide, something like that. So my brother-in-law said, "You know what? I'm going to come home from lunch from the restaurant, and I'm going to cast these, and I'm going to put them up on the bar." He wanted to put them up on his bar in the living room, in the living room, yeah. And I said, "Okay." But I guess the restaurant got really busy. He never came home, and like around 3 o'clock, the um, the guy who used to do the tours, the horse tours in the swamps would always ride by our house, because we knew the kid, and he would always take everybody by our house. And so they rode by, and there was like a half a dozen of them or so, and they just destroyed the footprints in the sand with the horses. And then they went off into the swamp. And by the time my brother-in-law got home that night after the restaurant closed, the footprints were destroyed. We were never able to cast any of them. But that was the first time I ever seen it, and when I seen that thing in the driveway, my brain couldn't comprehend what my eyes were seeing. Just it was an overload, like just like I can't believe what I'm seeing, And my cousin and I were like, we came to Florida to get killed by a monster. We live on the back street. We live in the back alley. We play in the back alleys of the Bronx. You know what I mean? We got to worry about gangs and thugs. But now we're gonna come down here and get killed by this monster. And so that was like the very first incident. Then few nights went by. This is like right after the 4th of July as well. Now, that particular summer down in South Florida, there was a drought, and there was a lot of fires in the Everglades. And this property, Sunshine Acres, backed up right to the Everglades. So there was a lot of animals coming in towards town because of the fires. So then a few nights go by, and my brother-in-law would always bring home a couple of pizzas for us when he was down at the restaurant, and we would all go like on the patio and eat, and BS and stuff, and see what to make sure he would have a checklist, make sure we got all the chores done that he had listed for us that day, and we were eating pizza, and then we're sitting there and BSing, and then we hear gunshots coming from the horse rancher's farm, like bang, bang, like a 30 or 30 or something like that going off. So, of course, we run to the front of the property, and you can see the muzzle flashes of the gun, and my brother says, "Why don't you guys jump on your bikes and go down and see what's going on?" So we jump, and of course, all the neighborhoods coming out, all the lights are going on in the houses. And we had really, really good friends who lived directly across the street from them, because at one point, my sister had her first house, what we used to call the greenhouse, was right across the street from the horse rancher. Then she sold that and she built a bigger house with an in-ground pool, like in the middle of the development, which we called the Blue House. So we had friends, down at that end of the neighborhood. So we jump on our dirt bikes and we race down there to see what's going on. And we run, of course, we run into our friend who's there, and we're like, hey, Jimmy, or whatever the kid's name was. He was like, what's going on? What's going on? And he says, dude, you're not going to believe what happened. I was like, what's going on? And he's like, that wild Mustang my father got from like Montana or something. And it was like, yeah, well, this guy had just brought this wild horse in from Wyoming or Montana or something, and he couldn't keep it in the stalls with the other horses, because it would kick and it would just make all the other horses a nervous wreck. So what he would do is he had it in a corral outside, and he had a Native American Seminole Indian come every day to work the horse to try to break it. And this horse, apparently this creature creeped up on this horse from out of the swamp and grabbed it on his hind quarters. Okay. And I guess when the creature grabbed it on his hind quarters, the horse must have kicked out and then jumped the corral and ran into the pasture. At this point, the rancher's coming out and he's blasting the creature with his gun. He's taking shots at it. The creature turns and runs back into the swamp. So the next day, the Seminole Indian guy comes and they ride out to the pasture and they bring the horse back to the corral, and we're sitting there with the sheriff and everybody and all the neighbors, and the horse had handprints in his hind quarters, not claw marks, but handprints. Like if I was to grab you by your wrist and squeeze real hard and you leave those marks on your wrist, that's what it had on its hind quarters. And which was crazy to think that something could grab something that hard that would leave, but the horse was able to kick out and get away. And so that was pretty crazy. And then the sheriff was like, you know what, we're going to have to pick up the patrols in this area, because this area has become very active. We're getting a lot of calls, from residents in here about the skunk ape, screaming's going on in the woods and this, that, and the other thing. So, okay. A couple of nights go by, maybe a week or two. I'm not really sure how long the time period was, but my sister and my brother-in-law had friends fly down from New York, and they were taking them out on the town. They were going to Miami for dinner and dancing or whatever. And my cousin Anthony and I were babysitting the kids that night, and they get back from a night out with their friends from New York around, I don't know, 1:00 in the morning, 1:30, something like that. They roll into the driveway, and my brother-in-law, he just had a brand new Lincoln Continental Mark IV or something. I don't remember what year it was, but they just rolled into the driveway, and of course, the dogs go crazy because the car's in the driveway. And we go out there to meet them, and my brother-in-law says, "Any action tonight?" And we're all sitting out there, and like, no action. The neighborhood's quiet. Could have heard a pin drop tonight. Nothing's going on. No sooner than we say that, we hear this blood-curdling scream. Nobody knows what it is. It's just, it goes right through you, right? At that point, the cattle rancher who lived up the street from us, maybe 100 yards up the street from us, he comes out blasting with his shotgun. Boom, boom. You can see the shotgun blast going off. So my sister runs in the house. She can't get in the house fast enough. My cousin Anthony, my brother says, jump in the car. Let's go see what's going on. So my cousin jumps in the car. He takes shotgun. I jump in the back. I'm hanging out of the sunroof. And we're driving up to the corner. And just as we get to the corner, the deputy is passing us. They're doing their night patrol. And you can see a car at the far end of the development, which we assumed was the sheriff, and the deputy down at this end of the development. And we happen to be behind the deputy's car. And he's cruising, really, really slow. And he's looking to his east. He's got his spotlight on because that's the side of the property that runs along the canals in the swamp. And he's looking in there with his spotlight, and we're following him. We're 5 feet behind him, going really slow, and everybody's looking to the left because the spotlight is on, to the left. When the creature comes out of the shadows from the right, and the deputy hits the creature with his car. The car stops dead. We stop dead. The creature goes down, takes down some kind of like stop sign or yield sign or something that you're not supposed to be able to bend. It's supposed to be able to handle like 150-mile-an-hour hurricane winds. Well, this creature landed on that sign and flattened it like a pancake, just bent it in half. And we're sitting there, and the creature gets up, and he kind of limps over to the deputy's car. And the deputy's car looked like it hit a telephone pole. It was just destroyed. And my brother-in-law hits it with the high beam so we can get a really good look at it. And like I said, I'm hanging out of the sunroof looking at this thing. And this creature walks up to the deputy's car, and it just screams bloody murder. And with both fists, it does like a hammer punch. Boom. And it punches the front of the car, and the back end of the car comes off the ground. And we're like, oh my God. And you can see the deputy. And back then, the deputies, they used to have the shotgun in between them and the passenger. It wasn't in the trunk or anything. That's where they carried the shotgun. And you could just see the deputy like holding onto the steering wheel, and not moving, like just frozen in fear. And the creature limps off into the swamp. And now the sheriff is coming down the block, and he sees the deputy's car all destroyed. So he puts his lights on, he comes racing over, and he's like, what the hell happened? And the deputy is explaining to him what happened. And then he comes over to us and he said, well, like, did you guys witness this? And we said, of course, yeah. And I guess he's taking our statement too for an insurance or whatever, and we're giving our witness statements to the sheriff what happened. Meantime, he's telling the deputy, why didn't you shoot the damn thing with the damn shotgun, And the deputy's like, nah, shotgun wasn't big enough, not for this thing. This thing was a monster, And at this point, the cattle rancher comes racing up in his pickup truck, and he says, Sheriff, you got to come see what this damn creature did to my prize bull. Now, this guy had one of those white Brahma bulls with the hump in its back, okay? And this bull, if it was 1,500 pounds, it was an ounce, okay? This thing was a monster. This bull was a monster. When I tell you, it was as big as a Volkswagen Bug. It was just a big bull. And I'm thinking to myself, I used to jog around that development every day. Back then, I was into martial arts and training, and I was jogging. And I used to run past that bull all the time. I was up close and personal to it. At one time, somebody's dog got out of their house and was chasing me. And I literally had to jump into the pasture with the bull to get away from this like Cujo dog. And the bull was just looking at me like, what the hell are you doing in here? And I was using the cows to work my way around to the front gate, putting the cows between me and the bull because I don't want the bull to charge me. Eventually, I was able to get out, at the front gate by the guy's house. So I know how big this bull is. I see them up close and personal. And so we go to the guy's pasture, and the rancher says, shine your spotlight onto my pasture. He shines the spotlight onto the pasture, and there's this Brahma bull just bleeding out with no head on it, just on like laying down on his stomach with no head, bleeding out. And then he shines this spotlight like 100 yards away, and there's the head at the other end of the pasture. I don't know what kind of strength these creatures have, but to rip a head off of a Brahma bull that probably was defending its territory is pretty crazy. I mean, I couldn't believe it. If I didn't see it with my own two eyes and somebody told me this, I wouldn't believe it. But the thing was dead, and the sheriff was taking a report because, this guy's got to report what happened. And at that point, The sheriff calls them for backup, and now you got the town police and the county police and the state police coming, and they're coming with dogs, and they're coming with horses, and they're coming with helicopters, and they're searching the swamp because they want to put an end to this creature's reign of terror. You know what I mean? They're gonna kill this thing if they can find it. And they searched the swamp all day and all night, and they never found anything. The next day, a couple of the town guys were there fixing the sign, you know, and they're like, "What the hell happened to this sign?" You know, and I hear them talking to each other. This thing is supposed to be hurricane proof, and I told them what happened. They were like, "What? Are you kidding me?" And I was like, "Dude, I was there. I was 10 feet behind the creature when it went down and it took that sign down, and like, holy crap, they couldn't believe it, you know." And we thought that there was going to be all kinds of reporters coming to interview us, you know, all this stuff, because all summer long we're seeing this on the news, we're hearing this, we're reading about it in the papers, and for some reason, and I don't know why, that incident was never reported. There was never. We went to the Winn Dixie, which was like the local supermarket, and we bought like three newspapers, and it was nothing was in any of them. It was never in any of the news, like on the TV or anything like that. And you know, and after that, things kind of settled down. But what I didn't tell Bree when she interviewed me for the BFRO was, at the time I didn't feel it was appropriate to talk about this, because I had promised someone that I would never talk about it. But 40 years later, I guess it's okay. At the time, we used to hang out in the swamp, okay? And at the end of the swamp, the local kids called it the turnaround. I guess the water would come in on high tide, turn around, and go back out. And we used to fish in the turnaround and all kinds of stuff. But the local kids would actually swim there. Now, there's alligators in the swamp, you know what I mean? And
Mm.
we actually ran over an alligator one night going home. It was crossing the road, and my brother-in-law was doing like 100 miles an hour down, and all of a sudden you heard bada boom. What was that? We look in the rearview mirror, and there's an alligator walking across the road. And so I used to tell these guys, "You guys are out of your mind. There's no way I'm going swimming in there. There's alligators in there. There's water moccasins. You're nuts, you know?" And they're like, "No, no. The gators don't come in the turnaround. They only come up to the certain point, and they don't come into the turnaround." And I was like, "You got to be crazy. There's fish, there's frogs, there's turtles. Of course they come in here, you know?" But the local kids used it as a swimming hole. Never had any issues. So then one day, I'm hanging out with one of my good friends, and he's telling me, he says, "You know what, Al?" He goes, "I think the reason why they can't find these creatures when it gets into the swamp is that these creatures have caverns in the swamp that they swim into, and opens up underground." He came up with this theory, and I was like, "Well, obviously they're going somewhere, because once these things get into the swamp, the authorities can't find them." So one day he says to me, he says, "I'm gonna start swimming around the 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 base of the turnaround, in between all the cattails and everything, and I'm gonna look for a cavern." So at one point, I guess he finds a cavern, right? Something that looks like a tunnel under the water that leads under the ground, where basically where we would hang out all night and ride our dirt bikes and party. And he goes into this cavern. He swims into this cavern, and and this kid was a wild kid. You know what I mean? He was a real rebel kind of kid. And his brothers, they were all rebels, man. Let me tell you, they had no fear. And he swims into this thing, and he finds this cavern, and he comes out. He says, "Al, you got to check this out." I said, "I'm not going in no cavern. Are you out of your mind? I'm not going in that water." He goes, "Dude, I'm telling you, you got to come with me." And I was like, "I'm not going with you. I'm not going in that water." So he goes, "All right." He goes, "Look, I'm going back in. If I'm not out in 10 minutes, ride to my house and get my brothers, tell them where I am, tell them to come get me." And I was like, "Dude, you're out of your mind." So anyway, I'm timing him. He goes in. He comes back out like 5 minutes later, and he's like all amped. I mean, he's bouncing off the wall. He's flying, and he's begging me to go in there with him because he wants me to validate what he's seeing, you know? And I was like, what did you see? What did you see? And he's like, it opens up to an underground cavern. You come up out of the water, and there's a cavern. He says, but it stinks to high heaven. You can't really breathe. It burns your eyes, but there are other caverns under there. And he goes, I think this is where these creatures are living, you know? And I was like, okay. I said, I believe you, because his kid was so amped up. I had to hold him down. He was so excited, you know? And he says, you got to come with me. And I said, listen, what do you think your father would do if he came home and found a stranger in his house? Your father would shoot him, you know, in a heartbeat. What do you think these creatures are going to do if they come out of these caverns and they find you in their house? No one's ever going to find you again. You know, you're going to be gone, you know? And I said, I'm not going in. I said, you know, he goes, so then he says to me, he says, okay, I'll tell you what. He says, do me a favor, promise me that you'll never tell anybody about this, because if the authorities find out about it, they're going to come in and they're going to cave these things in and kill all these creatures. And this is, you know, I don't want to see these animals get killed. You know what I mean? They're really, you know, they're just doing what they do. They're not really hurting anybody. They haven't injured anybody, haven't killed anybody. They're just taking, you know, cattle and horses and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. I said, I never told my cousin Anthony. I never told anybody. But then when we were coming back to New York, I told my brother was a parapsychologist and a paranormal investigator. And he worked with like people like Hans Holzer and stuff like that. And I couldn't wait to get back to New York to tell my brother about this, you know. And my cousin Anthony says, you can't tell your brother about this. And I go, what do you mean I can't tell my brother about this? He says, if you tell your brother about this, then everybody in the family is going to know about it. And we're going to be ridiculed. And, you know, my family is heartless. You know what I mean? They'll break your chops until, you know, you cry, because they're just ruthless like that. That's how we show our love, you know? And
Yeah.
so and I said, well, I got to tell my brother. He goes, I'll tell you right now. If you tell your brother and I got to deal with, you know, harassment from the family, I'm going to kick your ass. And my cousin Anthony was a big guy. You know, even at 15, he was a big kid. And he was like, I'm going to kick your ass. And I didn't want to get my ass kicked by my cousin. So I kept it to myself. And I never told anybody. I mean, I told a couple of my best friends. I had two best friends, Richie and Ed. And I told them about it, you know. But they were never saying anything around my cousin Anthony, because he would kick their ass as well, you know. So that was it. And then, you know what? And I kept that story to myself for 40 years until my brother wrote a book. He wrote a book called Frank Santariga, Paranormal Family and Friends. And he asked me if I had any stories. And then I gave him a couple of my experiences that I had over the years. And he was like, why didn't you ever tell me about this? You know, I was like, well, because Anthony threatened to beat me up. And, you know, so then he called my sister down in Florida to validate the story, you know, and then he talked to my cousin Anthony and he talked to my brother-in-law. But by the time the book actually came out, Anthony and my brother-in-law had passed, and it was just me and my sister who were left to validate it, you know. But he did all the research on it. He checked it out, and like I said, when B read the story on the Skunk Ape Museum website, she reached out to me because she lived in the next town over, and her father had a business in Davie, and she remembers all of that stuff going on that summer. And then she investigated, and her uncle was a cop in the next town over. The New City was to our south, and I forgot the name of the other one that where she lived, but so she remembered everything. You know, she goes, I remember all of that stuff. My father had a business in Davie. I remembered seeing it on the. My uncle was a cop, and he would talk about it with my father. You know, when he would come over and hang out, and about, you know, people getting like peeping Tom reports, but they weren't actually people. It was, you know, skunk apes looking in the windows and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a crazy experience, and not in a million years did I ever expect anything like that to happen. Because, like I said, we would go to Florida every single year, and we never had that experience. So, like I said, maybe because that summer there were the fires in the Everglades, and it drove all the animals inland, was the reason why. Because we had been there for like the previous 3 years, and we never experienced any kind of you know skunk ape experience. Now it may have happened after we left because we didn't spend the whole summer down there, just like the month of July. I know when we got back to New York, my brother-in-law's best friend, this guy Ralph, he had a horse ranch, maybe a quarter mile away, and the creature had gone into his stables, like ripped the door down off a stable or something, and killed a pony. And Ralph actually put a posse together with my brother-in-law, and they were tracking it because the creature had stepped on a nail or something when it broke the door down, and they were following a bloody footprint. They were tracking it that way, but once it got into the swamp again, it was gone. But it did kill one of his ponies. So, and
Wow.
that's the story in a nutshell.
Well, that's one of the best stories I have ever heard, and I am honored to have you on the show. You
Oh,
did a great
no,
job.
oh, thank you very much. Yeah, that was the first one. Now that I'm the director of the New York State Sasquatch organization, we have 2 or 3 hot spots up here that we research, and I've had many more experiences with the creatures up here. But like I like to say, is they tolerate my presence when we're there. So nothing violent, you know, but we've had many more encounters, and when they want us to leave, they let us know, and we leave. But
Yeah.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
they're pretty big up there in New York too.
yeah. You know what? I have never actually seen one face to face up here. They always kind of stay in the shadows.
Hmm.
But one of my friends who came out with us, he's like an alphabet guy. He wanted to experience it, and he's seen it behind me through the night vision goggles.
Hmm.
And he was freaking out because it was like right behind me. But you know, um, I knew that I was okay because we're at a location that I like to call the sacred site, and I know that when we're there, nothing's going to happen to us at the sacred site. And the one that was behind me was just a scout coming down to see who was at the location. Um, but I haven't been able to. The ones up here, I caught pictures of them from a distance, like just taking random photos and then going through the photos later and examining the photos like on a 60-inch screen TV to see what was there. You'll see like that patty shape at the
Yeah.
top of like at the top of a mountain, looking down at you, something like that. But when you're there, even though they've come in very close, I mean, they literally surrounded us a bunch of times. I would say between maybe 25 feet away, but the foliage is so deep and so thick that you can't see, especially at night with the canopy cover. It's so dark in there. Even with all the cameras that we use, the night vision, the full spectrums, the thermal imagers, and all that other stuff, it
Hmm.
doesn't. Once you hit that foliage, you can't record anything. There's nothing coming through. So
Yeah.
we've never been able to actually. They've never stepped out to actually let us see them. And this has been a long process. This has been going on a long time, and we gift them, and they gift us back, and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
we have a good rapport with them, but no actual visuals yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have a a bunch of questions for you if you want to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. Well, first I want to start off with you have already done a report with the BFRO, and I just want to say I'm not affiliated with them, but um am I okay to show the pictures and stuff that you did off the website?
Absolutely. I reached out to Ree, who was the investigator who did all the research on it. And she said, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'll give you her contact information. If you want to interview her somewhere down the road, she'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Yeah,
And I
it'd
reached,
just be cool to talk to her because she really did such a great job on this investigation. I was blown away.
oh, me too. I mean, I was very leery because, it's, I'm not affiliated with the BFRO in any way, shape, or form either. And I'm very leery of other people using my experiences and telling them and I was very leery, but she did an amazing job. She was phenomenal. And then she hooked me up with Stabilla Irwin, who does all their um, drawings, etchings, whatever you want to call them. And
They're
Stabilla,
amazing.
yeah, Stabilla, yeah, and Stabilla's an amazing artist. Oh my God. Um, she did the image I seen.
Mm.
The only thing she didn't get around to doing was colorizing it to make it have like that reddish tinted hair. But
Mhm.
she did a black and white etching of it, and she did an amazing job. I can't tell you how many times we called each other back and forth, change this, do that, make this arms longer, Oh, I
Uh-huh.
mean, we 100 times, and she was very patient with me, and she did an amazing job. And I reached out to her as well, just to make sure that you could use that image and it wouldn't be any
Mhm.
issues. And she said, absolutely, Al. Tell him to, use anything he wants. I said, okay.
Awesome. Amazing. Okay. Is she still in business? Does she still do this for a living or as a hobby?
Who, Sabilla?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe she's still associated with the BFRO as far as renderings go. Yes, drawings and stuff like that.
Okay. I'd like to get what I seen drawn up if
Oh, yeah.
that's
I mean,
possible. That would be
yeah.
amazing.
I'll give you her contact info too. I'll send them both to you.
Yeah, that would be great. And I really appreciate that, Al.
No, no problem. No problem whatsoever.
Okay. Well, I'll get into the questions that I have and you can just answer them the best you can.
Sure.
Okay. So I want to mention you have a picture here of the area in Florida. It's
Yes.
a Google Earth screenshot. Back then, it was a lot more vegetation and swamp, right?
Oh my God! Yeah, compared to what the photograph that off of Google, it was like that development, you know, had maybe 25 houses on it at the time. I don't even believe that the horse rancher and the cattle rancher is even there anymore. I'm sure they sold off all that property to build more houses. From what I understand, that's a very high scale community now. The houses
Mhm.
are going for almost like $1 million. So,
Oh, wow.
so the property itself is worth a lot of money. Yeah, no, it's a very high end community from what I understand these days. Yeah, my sister
Okay.
was telling me. Yeah.
And you seem to have plotted each incident on the map.
Yeah,
Um,
well, when Ree was doing it, we were in constant contact, and
mm,
like I said, there was like the horse rancher when you first came in, and the cattle rancher once you were into the property. Like I said, his the horse rancher was like right at the very beginning of the property. There was a canal that went by his property, and then let's call that the northwest part of the property,
mhm.
and then the cattle rancher was like on the southeast side of the property, and he had his property ran against the canals as well. He had property that went up against the canal as well. Yeah,
Okay.
there wasn't a lot of homes back then in that community.
Okay. So the direction that the skunk ape was traveling, is that following a waterway or some type of creek or drainage system?
Well, I believe it was coming right out of the woods, out of the swamp. It was coming out of that area in the back where we hung out and did our bonfires and jumped our motorcycles and stuff like that.
Hmm.
That was the trail that went actually into the swamp, and there was like a horse trail that went through the swamp. It was a couple miles long, and then it came back out like a big circle.
Yeah.
But right when you first got into the wood line, it would open up like almost like maybe I would say maybe 40, 35 yards of like open area. And that's where we would have our bonfires and jump our bikes, because once you got into that, then you would get into the bridle path for the horses to go actually through the
Mhm.
swamp. But we didn't ride those bridle paths because, um, first of all, it would just tear up the path, and the horses, the would have a problem because it would be all nothing but rocks. It wouldn't be any dirt there. And
Yeah.
second of all, if we did, we only rode it during the day, and then we couldn't ride our bikes back there if the horses were back there, because the horses would freak out because those dirt bikes are so loud. So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
So I remember you saying that they come around certain times a year. Are you saying that they migrate, or is that the feeling that you guys got in Florida?
Well, that's what the local guys told us, that they come around every year this time when it gets hot. Now, like I said,
So
that was
summertime, like
yeah,
June,
it
July.
was July.
Oh, okay.
But like I said, we were down there for like 3, 4 consecutive years in a row in July, and we had never experienced it before. But we were at the greenhouse, which was at the beginning of the development, and not the blue house that was at the back of the development.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it may not have went that far, south, or what am I saying, north.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So when the skunk ape was outside of the house that night, the dogs were your guys' sirens to say, I guess, your alarm.
Oh yeah, the dogs. The dogs. I mean, we could smell them, right? They smell like the only way I could describe it is, smells like 1,000 skunks all at once. Okay, but the
Hmm.
dogs would know immediately before we would even smell the creature. Now, I don't know if the creature let out that skunk smell because of the dogs were going crazy, you know what I mean? Or, just trying to scare the dogs off or what, because the dogs would know before we smelt anything, and they would go absolutely insane, and we'd have to put them in the ground. And both of my sister's dogs were big bone German shepherds, and they were 125 pounds each, and they were K9 trained, so they weren't afraid of anything. But like I said, when the whole house is asleep and they've got these two big dogs going off, you got to get them, put them in the garage someplace so that they don't make so much noise. So because if my brother-in-law would have got up, he would have lost his mind.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So one thing I gotta say is the Sasquatches, the Bigfoots, they spend most of their entire life in solitude, never being around people. What do you think causes this type of activity? Every day in a certain spot, the screaming and just all the strange activity. What do you think causes this? Maybe it's a rogue. One got kicked out of a group and it's looking for its own family, or maybe this thing's got fleas and hasn't eaten for a long time and it really needs the food. And I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think this is just one man's opinion. I think the it was not happy that the swamp was on fire, and it couldn't be in its home. It
Right.
was driven out of its home, number one. So it wasn't a happy camper, number
Driven
one.
out of its home by humans only to be closer to humans.
Well, no, it was driven out of its home by the fires in the swamps.
Oh,
The fi-
okay.
the swamps, the Everglades was on fire that whole summer. I mean, that's all you seen on the news was them fighting fires in the
Now,
Everglades.
was that
So
natural or caused
no, that
by
was
people?
natural. No, that was
Oh, okay.
natural. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that was natural.
Okay.
Because of the heat wave, it was a combination of a heat wave, no precipitation,
So
and
they had
just
no choice but to be there pretty much.
yeah, and I mean that location, like I said, that development was a good, I would say 5, 10 miles out of town. So it was on the outskirts of town, you know what I mean? And it was surrounded on all sides by swamps. It was it was built literally in the middle of a swamp. And so for this creature to come out of the deep swamp and come onto there, and then you're talking about, all kinds of food sources. There were people who had chickens, there were people who had ducks, you got cows, you got horses. So, if
Watermelons.
watermelons, the wild watermelons that were growing right next door to us, and fish in the swamp. And like I said, there was fish in the swamp, there was turtles, there was frogs, there was a lot of food sources there. um, so it wasn't a bad location to still be very rural, but still around people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
When you saw the canines, were they like brown or they yellow or were they white?
they were like yellow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they can definitely see good at night because when you were in that house, this thing was looking at you the entire time and it was fixed on you guys, correct?
Yeah, and its eyes were red. Like when I seen it, it's now I don't know if that was a reflection of the floodlights hitting it in the face, and it was red, or if they were just red on their own. That I couldn't tell you, because the whole time we seen it, even when it was at the far end of the property by the man-made lake, drinking the water, it was looking at us. Its eyes were still red. But again, my sister had floodlights in the back of the house that went out that far. So it could just been the reflection of the light hitting in the eyes. But its eyes were red.
Mm-hmm. Other than being confused and not being able to process the information, could you describe the emotions that you were feeling? Like, was it dread or like a flood of adrenaline through your body and you couldn't really react? Or could you explain that?
Um, it was it was a combination of adrenaline, as being excited, and it was a combination of being scared to death.
Okay.
I'll be brutally honest with you. When I got back to New York, I had nightmares for years
Mm-hmm.
because
It,
my bedroom had a big picture window in it where I lived, even though it was in the city. And it was a small bedroom, you know what I mean? So like this creature could have put its arm through my window and grabbed me at the furthest length of the bedroom and just pulled me out. So
mhm.
for years, I had nightmares of being dragged out a window by this creature, even though I was in the middle of the city.
Yeah, and for the people out there that, are going to say, "Why didn't you take a picture?" This was in the 70s, and when you feel like you're about to die and you're seeing something new, or maybe not about to die, but you know what I mean, you could potentially be in danger. That's not the first thing you think of is, "Where's the camera? Let me go grab
Yeah. Plus, back then, I think we had like 112 cameras with the
it."
little light bulb that spun around. You get four shots out of it. You know what I mean? And
Uh-huh.
you know, I'm a kid down in Florida having the time of my life. You know what I mean?
Mm.
With my cousin Anthony, who turned 15, who got his driver's license down there. If we weren't hanging out at the pool or in the swamp, we were down on the Fort Lauderdale Strip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Partying and hanging out on the beach and stuff like that. So
Hmm. But
um,
even now in New York, like, or that's what you're talking about, your group in New York, like when you get surrounded by them, you still that's not the first thing that comes to mind because every time it's an adrenaline rush. And
yeah, and even when we get surrounded by them, like I said, we got 3, 4 cameras going in each direction. We use low light cameras,
mhm,
that film in regular, vision like we see. Then we have the
mhm,
night vision cameras that film in IR. We have a infrared camera that films in full spectrum, and we have a thermal camera that films in thermal. So we got 4 cameras going all the time,
oh
and
wow.
you
Yeah,
know,
and it's still tough.
yeah, I think I got one photograph of one underneath a tree watching us. In all the years of taking photographs, I got a picture of one big one that was underneath the tree, and he was watching us. And I'll be brutally honest with you, I didn't even find that photograph. We must have looked at when we do our evidence review. We must have looked at that photograph 100 times and no one's seen it. But we put our stuff out on the internet for other people to look at, raw. And I had somebody come back from, I don't know if it was California or whatever, and said, "Dude, you caught something in this bush." And when he sent it to me, and I looked at it, I was like, "Ah, this is definitely photoshopped." And
Mhm.
I went and I looked at the original photo on the chip, and I was shocked. That the image was actually there. And like I said, I can't tell you how many times myself or the guys on my team looked at this photo and never seen it, but
Mm-hmm.
somebody else with fresh eyes spotted it. And
Yep.
this happens time and time again. And that's why we put our stuff out there raw. This way people can look at it. And if it's something that we say it's this and they say it's that, and it turns out to be something else, we'll correct ourselves and say, okay, you're right. We agree with you. We got it wrong, But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think all the times I've been out there, I caught one photograph of one that was down on the ground underneath a bush or a little tree watching us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that stuff is very expensive to come by.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're all working guys. We don't have the same stuff that you see on the TV shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there are
It's a
people out
struggle.
there. There's people out there that have equipment that's 10 times better than the stuff we use. But we use what we have.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay. When the creature was outside, could you hear it moving around? Like when it ate the watermelon and stuff? Could you hear that?
No, I couldn't hear it walking because it was walking on sand. I didn't even hear it because our window to the fence line, I would say, was a solid 25 feet away. So, and then, you got the screen and the window and the air conditioner on in the house. You couldn't hear it walk on the sand. No, but when it all went off in the woods and it started screaming, you could hear it as clear as day. Yeah.
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 Okay. When the patrol vehicle got hit by the Sasquatch or by the Skunk Ape, what'd that sound like? And how close were you?
Yeah, it was like a shock because everybody in both cars was looking left towards the swamp where the floodlight was. That light the cops have on the side of their car,
Mm-hmm.
and the deputy was crawling. When I tell you he was doing like 10 miles an hour, we were doing 10 miles an hour, and then we heard bang, like just a big bang,
It sounded like a
like it,
car wreck.
yeah, it sounded like it hit a telephone pole. And when
Yeah.
everybody looks back and there's this creature going down like in slow motion, it actually went down. Like I said, when it went down, it hit that yield sign or school bus sign or whatever the hell it was, and just flattened it, and just bent it in half. And at that point, it was like everything went in like slow motion. It was surreal. You know what I mean? When he got back up and he came over and it screamed at the deputy in the police car. I was pissed. And when it punched that car, I mean, for the back of that car to come off the ground, I mean, it was insane. It was like, and my brother-in-law's got the high beams on it. We're a car length behind the police car, and I'm sticking out of the sunroof. So there's nothing between me and it. Like my brother-in-law and my cousin were looking through the front windshield. I was out of the sunroof, hanging out of the sunroof, so I'm looking right at it, and it was surreal. That's the only way I could describe it. It was a surreal moment,
Can
and
you describe what it's like looking into the eyes of a Sasquatch, an actual real living skunk ape?
scary because this creature was not a happy creature. He was mad. He was angry. He was angry. Like I said, when he looked into that glass and he probably seen his reflection and he did that flex thing, it was definitely like a territorial kind of thing. Like, this is my turf. Not
Mm-hmm.
that he didn't realize he was looking at himself, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. But
Yeah.
he was like, I thought, he was gonna charge the glass and come into the house because he was so pissed.
Yeah.
But thank God he just turned and walked away. Maybe at some point he realized he was looking at himself, when he seen the movements, but I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating.
Yeah. And do you think the deputy needed to change his pants after that one?
It may have been a Charmin moment for the deputy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the sheriff was screaming at him, "Why didn't you shoot it with the shotgun?" And he was like, "Shotgun wasn't big enough, you know." I mean, I
Oh
don't
yeah.
know. I don't know what kind of rounds he had in the gun. He may have been just like double odd buck or something, you know, not slugs. But I would imagine if he had slugs in there and he put like 5 or 6 of them into the creature would have went down. But you know, again, I'm speculating. You know.
Do you think they had an order to shoot the creature?
Oh yeah, I think they were there to put it down and put an end to its reign of terror, and you know, and that was before it killed the bull. After it killed the bull, like I said, the sheriff called in everybody. I mean, you know, like I said, when they start rolling up with horses and dogs and helicopters, and you got the state police there and the county police and the town police, there was a lot of cops in those woods that night, you know, in that swamp, and
Did
they
you
found
see
nothing.
any black Suburbans there? Or I guess I don't know what they used at that time, but
No, I didn't see any MIBs or anything like that. But that was before I knew anything about those guys, you know. But
Mhm.
I always found it curious that with all that manpower and everything, nothing was ever reported, you know, because like I said, that whole summer, that's all you've seen on in the paper or in the news, you know, news reporters. Like one woman said, "Oh, she thought it was a big black guy looking in her window." You know what I mean? Again, this is South Florida in the '70s. You know what I mean? This is a
yeah.
cowboy town, you know. And she called the cops, and the cops went there, and they said, "No, it wasn't, sir. What? Sorry, ma'am, it wasn't an African American guy. It was a skunk ape, you know." And the thing would run off and dive into the swamp and swim off. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
you know, and we heard those stories all summer long, and we thought for sure the next day, with all this police present, that the news would catch wind of it, and they would come out and they would interview the cattle guy, they would interview the horse guy, they would interview us as witnesses to the car accident and the whole 9 yards. And nope, nothing was ever heard of. It's very
And
strange.
if they didn't find the creature, I think that proves how difficult it can be to track these things down. They're almost untrackable unless you get lucky and run across them because you were in their territory. And maybe they wanted to show you themselves to scare you off.
Yeah, I think once they make it to that water, they're done. You know what I mean? I think you're not going to find them.
No, they hear the
As
dogs and see all the people there immediately. They're gone.
as a matter of fact, I forgot to mention this. There was a day where my cousin Anthony and I were fishing in the turnaround. We just decided to go fishing in the turnaround, and we're fishing in there. You know, we're catching fish. You know, and there was an alligator sunning himself, just floating on top of the water, floating, floating, floating. And at one point, he ended up in the turnaround. And when this alligator noticed where he literally ran on the top of the water to get out of there. Why? I don't know. But whatever was in that turnaround, that alligator wanted nothing to do with it. And
Yeah.
we just looked at each other like, what the hell was that? Did we just see that? You know? And like this alligator was scared to death to be in that turnaround. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I find it interesting that you mentioned the cavern theory. And I think that's interesting because here where I live, we got a river called the Merrimack River, and people say that there's caverns along the bank, and the river's pretty deep in certain spots and you can't see. You have to
Yeah.
swim deep underneath there and maybe get into these caverns and they open up.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this kid told me. You know, like he was jumping in and out of the cattails looking for something along the banks, and I'm thinking he's going to get, caught up in this stuff and drowned, or he's going to swim. Or what I really thought was he was going to find an alligator nest and go into that and get eaten. But
Yeah.
no, he found something, And I'll tell you what, when he came out of there, he smelt like skunk ape. You know what I mean? He had
Really?
that he had that stench on his body. Yeah, and
Uh-huh.
all he had on was a pair of shorts. He wasn't wearing a shirt or anything, you know. So that funk stuck to his skin, you know.
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, it seems like you had a clan that was around you guys for a while. And it's a rare thing, but it does happen. It does occur.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know if it was a family unit or just one rogue guy out on his own. You know, I don't know. I didn't see any female ones with breasts. I didn't see any little ones. I just seen this one, what I would consider to be an alpha, because she was a monster. You know, like when I hear people talk about the skunk ape in Florida being smaller than the Sasquatches in the Pacific Northwest, I say you didn't see what I seen, because what I seen was 9 feet tall, 900 pounds, maybe even heavier. According to Vic Cundiff, you know, I'm light on the weight. You know what I mean? He says, Al, it's probably much heavier than that, but I'm going 100 pounds per foot. That's my estimate on it. You know, it's just a guess.
Yeah. Okay. Um, to me, it appears the each year the forest gets smaller and smaller, and maybe there is some help with conservation because they buy new land and make, new state parks, but either way there's always new development. Do you think the skunk apes in Florida are in danger per se, that they're getting pushed into these corners and these little pockets?
No, I don't think. I think in all the national forests, like down in Florida, Okeechobee, and the Everglades, I think there's plenty of room for them to live comfortably without, of course, you're going to run into humans because humans are going out there camping and stuff like that. But I don't think that, I think they have plenty of room. I mean, I think last time I checked, there was like 750 million square acres of national forest in the United States alone, not including Canada. So I think they have plenty of room to live, you know,
Hmm.
without interacting with people. But of course, there's going to be interaction because people are out there camping, people are out there hiking and stuff like that. So you're going
Yeah.
to run across them every now and then.
Okay. Well, I hear these stories that, the government hunts them down, the military, they hunt down these creatures and shoot them. But it doesn't make sense to me because these new wildlife refugee areas that they create, they're only bow hunting. Some you can't even hunt. They're just management zones and you have to draw a tag and only certain people can go in there, and pretty much they don't even get hunted and they're just filled up with wildlife. Um do you think that maybe they're protecting them and creating these areas for them, because some areas you can't even go in? And I've heard the St. Helens story where they were actually
Hmm.
going in there and helping them. I don't know if that's true or not, but you can't just throw any story out the window because we don't know. um
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of truth to all of the stories that we hear. How much so, I don't
mhm,
know. Um, I think there are locations where they do put land aside for these creatures. Also know people, again, like, one of my good friends. He's an alphabet guy, and he says, yeah, there are teams that go out and, you know, get rid of nuisance. They call them nuisance animals. You know what I mean? So if you have one that's, maybe a juvenile, a teenager that's out of control, and he's tearing stuff up, they'll send a unit in there to just take care of him. And
mhm.
that's how they alleviate the situation, because what they want to do is make the area safe for everybody and everything. You know what I mean? If you have one that's going off the deep end, just killing everything that's in its path, um, could be scary, could be very dangerous.
Yeah. So maybe people are being protected and they don't even realize it. They go in there and get these things out if they're actually hurting people or destroying things and causing problems
Yeah, just like I don't think they do it.
for us.
You
They
know,
don't. They're not doing it for us.
I don't think. I don't. What I'm saying, I don't think the government is going and killing every one of single of these creatures, everyone they can find. I think it's just the
That would
nuisance
create a
animal.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think they're taking care of ones that are just killing livestock or attacking people's houses or stuff like that. You know what I mean?
And that seems to be against Bigfoot code. Like they have their own laws. So
Well, I think they've been around forever, and they know that man is dangerous. And I think the best thing to do, I think they, my personal opinion is they've been around long enough to know that, those little guys right there are dangerous, and the further we stay away from, the better it is for us.
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that finishes up all the questions.
Okay.
Do you have anything else you want to add, or?
No, not at all. I mean, I think we touched on all the stuff we wanted to discuss, so I'm good.
Okay. Well, like I said, you did a great job, and I'm
Thank you.
excited. Okay.
Yeah, if you ever want to hear any of the other stories, give me a ring, and I'll tell you about the other experiences that we've had. We've had some pretty crazy stuff happen to us out there. So over the years.
Okay. So, do you want to do a part 2 in the future, and
Sure.
we can talk about the group and all those experiences?
If you'd like, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. You mentioned the thermal, the night vision, and all the different type of cameras, the full spectrum cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in learning more about those and using them out in the woods myself.
Yeah, and I'll give you a little tip too. When you go out there and you're recording, a lot of people, they bring digital voice recorders to catch screams and stuff like that. Make sure you take two from two different manufacturers, because each manufacturer sets their recording at different frequencies, and what you don't catch on one, you'll catch on the other.
Okay, yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We've had a lot of success with that.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna keep in contact with you and ask you all kinds of questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's a pleasure to know somebody who's actually out there looking and runs the equipment and has had experiences. To me, that's important, and I'm glad we got in contact for sure.
I'm glad we were able to hook up as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with all that being said, I appreciate you being on the show, and you did a great thing for everybody.
Oh, thank you. And soon as we're done here, I'll send you the contact info for Ree and Sibylla.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Al, you have a great day, and I appreciate you being on Sasquatch Theory.
Just let me know when you're going to air it or whatever. Maybe you could send me a banner and I'll promote it. You know what I mean? On all of my groups and all of my sites and stuff like that. So, maybe we could, get you more followers or subscribers or something like that.
Yeah, sounds good. I have a bunch of videos I need to do, and I want to mention that too. Is I'm running behind, but the only reason is my computer's a little slow and outdated, which I'm working on getting a new one, and my internet's really slow. So when it comes to uploading, downloading, and moving files, it's just taking me a long time. So if everybody can just hold on, your story's going to be told.
Yeah, whenever you get around to it, just give me a heads up so I can promote it for you.
Okay, yeah, I definitely will, and I appreciate it.
No problem whatsoever.
Okay, Al. Well, like I said, it was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope...
Miguel, it was my pleasure to meet you and talk to you as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you have a great day, Al, and we'll talk as soon as we get off here.
Okay.
All right.
Ciao.
See you later, bud.
So it's like I said, Al did an awesome job at telling his encounters, and I was floored by all the activity he experienced. I also think it is a brave thing Al continues to share his experiences today and also goes out searching for answers. I can't tell you guys how many times I've sat around and pondered on how the Sasquatch are able to avoid humankind and remain undetected for so long. I have noticed that if you point in the direction a Bigfoot came from or went to, it's almost always leading towards water. I feel in Al's case a swamp is no different. A swamp's ecosystem in most cases is rich with wildlife and food sources. It provides water and an unlimited amount of cover within its deep habitat. Al has had a long time to think about his encounters, and his theories are right on point with mine as far as why the Bigfoots came to that area. When part of their forest becomes disturbed, they will go to a new location, and in some cases closer to humans. Anyways, that's all for today, and I appreciate you guys listening to the Bigfoot stories. Until the next time, everyone.